like sometimes we have to just kind of put it down and just live the moment, you know, like, and it feels great, you know.
Now on that note,
Yeah.
we're on the Big Island, and it's a beautiful place. Have you traveled outside of the islands?
Yeah. So well, I've been to Japan for vacation and also with family, and also like my wife is from Washington, and so like we travel to Washington, you know, on a yearly basis. And I've been to all the other islands except for Molokai. So
Okay.
yeah, I've been to Maui, been to Kauai, and also Oahu and everything. But that's about it. But yeah, you know, like, and also been to like Las Vegas and like, you know, like the West Coast and everything
Right,
like
the
that.
ninth island.
And all that kind of stuff. I know, right? Although all the other locals are there too, so it's like, but anyways.
Hey, I
but
see
yeah.
you. Hey.
But yeah, you
Small
know,
world.
it's like so yeah, you know, I've been to other places, but
What is it with the Big Island that you love so much?
So I guess the one thing about like living here is that, like, you know, my family was actually living in Oahu like all their lives, and it was like due to my dad's like work transfer that we had to move over here at the Big Island. And that was like around like, you know, like 1988 and everything like that. So I was still like in elementary school at the time. But one thing that I've learned about, you know, like just living here on the island is that, you know, I like a lot of history, and I'm kind of like fascinated by a lot of like, you know, like relics and artifacts and that kind of stuff, right? And so there was a lot of that here, and I was like really like loving it, that like there was still sort of like these really like pockets of areas, especially here like in Honokaha Harbor, where, you know, like there's like these, you know, these ancient settlements that are just still here, that are preserved and everything like
Sitting
that.
right where we are right now.
I really like that, because it's like, you know, when I was, you know, like when we're living in Oahu, it's like, you know, we don't see that anymore. We don't see any of this kind of stuff, like where it's like, you know, the ancient life that was here, you know, like that there was, you know, like settlements here. There was actually, you know, like ancient civilization and culture and everything, the Hawaiian culture here. And so like to me, like I like that, and I like the fact that, like, you know, the Big Island is still very, you know, relatively country in a lot of ways. There's still a lot of nature. There's so many different, like, you know, geographies as well. I mean, like there's
there's snow up in the mountains.
There's snow, right? There's snow. There's rainforest. There's like beach. There's like, you know, like kind of like deserted areas up like Hawaii and everything like that. And it's really cool because like you have like so many different diversities of like landscape and everything like that. And the fact that like the Big Island just has that, like, is one thing that, like, I guess like a lot of, like, for me is like is to be one and to be in tune with nature straight up. Like that's like one thing that I really enjoy, like being here on the islands.
I see a lot of your drone footage out along the beaches.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I just look at it saying, wow, I can't believe that I was there and I didn't even know it looked like that.
I just still like the really like low, like slow pace that the Big Island still has. I mean, when I moved over here in '88 and everything like that, like, I mean, it was so slow that I was just like, what the heck? It's like, there's nothing going on here. I mean, I was flipping out like literally, like I was flipping out when we first moved to like my auntie and uncle's house. Like they had like a coffee farm and everything like that, right? And we were driving on this road. It was just like one lane. It was like a one-lane road, and like there was like grass growing in the middle, right? And I was flipping out. Like that's how I was, like, kind of, I guess, like, it just kind of goes to show you, like, you know, when you live in Oahu, like in a city, it's like you don't see any of that kind of stuff.
Now, is that
right?
where you were born?
Yeah,
on
in Oahu, yeah, right. And so like when I see this type of like, what the heck, you know, but then to them it's normal. It's like, you know, that's when you really start to, like, you know, you have to sort of like readjust yourself and be like, you know, okay, like we have to live a little slower here. We have to live a little more, and live a little more conscious, you know, like with your behavior as well, and also with like connecting with, like, you know, everybody else around you. And yeah,
I could imagine that that's probably where your mentality or your just push to try and add culture to this island came from.
Yeah, because to me, like, I feel like, you know, the beauty is all here, and one thing is for certain is that, like, you know, there's certain reasons why, like, people want to come to the islands. And the way that I see it is that, like, as much as, like, you know, people can come here just to kind of, like, you know, like vacate and, you know, like, you know, release from it all and everything like that, I personally feel like it's definitely a much more of a spiritual spiritual journey for like for everybody actually, you know, because it's like for those who are just coming from like, you know, so many places that are not used to this type of like, you know, nature, it's like to me like I feel like you know, as much as like, you know, visitors come here, you know, somewhere along the way, it's like it's definitely going to like help them like cleanse a little bit, like spiritually, you know, like whether if they're in the water or whether they're just going on a hike or something like that, you know, because it's like, you know, a lot of like being around, you know, green, being around like blue skies, being around the ocean and stuff like that could be super rare to like, you know, like some people who are coming from the mainland or
Right.
something like that.
Well,
right?
even where you would have nature on the mainland,
Yeah.
you wouldn't even appreciate it like you would
Right.
just thinking about
Right.
the islands.
Right. And so like, you know, for somebody like me that's been living here, it's like, you know, some, you know, people would say like, oh yeah, like you just get used to it and stuff like that, and it's just like nothing. But to be honest with you, I've never got used to it. It's like, you know, I've always been like, you know, super appreciative with like, you know, everything that we have here, like in terms of like the sands and like the breezes and the skies and the snow and everything like that. And, you know, of course we have like the, you know, the volcano and stuff like that, right? So it's like all of this, it's like, it's, everything is alive. And like we should all just be like alive with it and just like, you know, coexist with it. You know, that's all it is. As much as like, you know, like there's, you know, there's a lot of, you know, controversies, like, you know, just kind of like real talk and stuff like that of like, you know, people saying like how, you know, like, you know, we can't have like too much people visiting here and stuff like that. I understand that. Like, I totally understand that. However, it's like, you know, somewhere along the way, like, you know, I think about it in a more of a spiritual sense that like, you know, like it, like people need to sort of like, be in the be in the midst of all of this to just kind of like find themselves and like find, you know, like some sort of clarity, you know.
It's so funny because that's the way I kind of ended up here on the islands.
Yeah.
Is just needing the experience. I said,
Right.
I'm going to give myself a certain amount of time. I'm going to go to Hawaii, and I never left. And a lot of it is in a lot of my thought process is that I actually don't want to go back to the mainland because there is a completely different world that I created for myself here.
Right.
And I feel like the way that time moves here is even different. And that for me is kind of what I needed. I needed more time to slow down.
Right.
Because I felt like everything was moving so fast, especially with having to navigate a career. Here, I just feel like I'm trying to figure it out every day.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, no, totally. Because it's like, you know, like to a lot of people, it's like it's really all about like finding their resonance, you know. Because one thing is for certain is that like we're living in a world, or like the way that I see it is that like, you know, we tend to always want to be in control of everything, you know. Like we're just like a controlling species. I mean, that's just the way that it is. We want to try to like, you know, like do certain things, be certain things, or like, you know, like we're always like having to be in control of like every aspect of our life. But then we tend to always forget that like there is the unpredictability of anything happening like without your control, right? And so that's one thing that like for me, like I feel like is sort of like hindering a lot of like, you know, like the true feeling of like being human is not to be in so much control, but to also accept like the good and the bad equally. Like that's just the way that it is. Like for me, it's like, you know, that's how I've pretty much like lived my life. Like, you know, even just like living here, it's like, you know, you tend to see like a lot of the good and the bad, and then also like, you know, you tend to see a lot in people like the good and the bad, right? However, it's like, you know, it's to me like I feel like it is the yin yang process, right? It's like, you know, there's a little good, you know, in bad, but there's a little bad in every good. But then it's like they all need to be here and they need to all coexist so that like, you know, there is a certain type of balance and an understanding, because like, you know, we don't want to always think that like good people are always going to be good and bad people are always going to be bad. It's like, no, there's always going to be a way where it's going to flip at some point. But at the same time, it's like you're always wanting to be conscious about like how you want to portray yourself and like, you know, to put yourself out there as sort of like, you know, like open to a lot of different people. And so, you know, like my, I guess like the topic of this whole journey is really like your, you know, your composure to a lot of different things, and like how well you handle, you know, pressure, success, you know, good fortunes, bad fortunes, and having the composure to just kind of move on, and to also like, you know, move on and to accept it for what it is, but then you still have like so much more ahead of you that you can actually still kind of, you know, like slowly start to construct.